Yes, I have YouTube up. What's going on, y'all? This is Jackie Luqman.
And I am the Pitbull of Politics, Abdul Shahid Luqman, on the passenger seat.
And this is another episode of Coffee, Current Events in Politics, live in Coffee, Current Events in Politics in Luqman Nation. Ooh, it's been a bruising week, so we're a little bit discombobulated. We apologize, but thanks so much for joining us again, y'all.
Yep, it's the most dangerous show on social media, most dangerous show anywhere. And because this is where the truth is told, unapologetically black, unapologetic truth, and all that in between. We may hurt your feelings, you may hurt ours, but you know, we're gonna keep on going. Speaking of hurt feelings, you did the thing with Jared Ball.
I did.
And some of the ADOS crowd, you know, was kind of a little sore at you.
Yeah, a little bit, because I said something that was not entirely accurate, and it wasn't intentional. I was just running my mouth and just, you know, said something that I shouldn't have said that was not accurate. I said that in our critique of the new hashtag ADOS movement, that they are focusing primarily on getting a check. That's not true. That is not accurate. I will gladly admit when I'm wrong. I shouldn't have said that. They're not just advocating for a check. Although I have to tell you, let's make this clear. We don't have a problem with checks being a part of reparations.
Oh, no,
they should be.
All.
Compensation of all kinds of different forms should be a part of reparations for African Americans. But it is not true that the ADOS movement that's, you know, behind this Twitter hashtag is only advocating for a check. Everything else we said in that video about our criticism of them for their anti-immigration stance, all that other stuff is absolutely accurate. I really just should not have said, why are they only advocating for a check? Because that was not true. I just, you know, one of those things. I admit that I said something I shouldn't have. I apologize. But every bit of the rest of that criticism is, we stand by that. So there you go.
And you know, one of the things that really bothered me about them coming at us, because when we first broached that topic before, and you know, one of the things I think that is really problematic, especially in our culture today, is that we cannot disagree civilly. Now, I mean, for like you know, some of the comments that the ADOS followers came at us before, and you know, it's just so like just hate filled and and acidic and mean spirited. And you know, we were talking about yesterday, you and I, we were talking about how the level of discourse in this country has really, really fallen. I mean, there used to be a time in school. I know it was a time when I was in school when they used to teach you debating skills. They used to teach you how to debate. They used to teach you how to, if you had a position on something, how to not only articulate your position, but also be able to, if there's an opposing view, be able to do that without, wanting to cut the other person's throat.
Right.
We were watching, like, as you know, one of my favorite things I like to do is watch James Baldwin and William F. Buckley at the Oxford debates.
Yeah.
And, and I said to you, I said, I don't think that something like that today would go over well with today's audience. I mean, we don't even like to read 2 paragraphs.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, it's
That's
2 paragraphs.
Too long. Too long. Don't read.
Right. So I think that, and I really think that, because we have been engineered, and I say engineered because I think technology has a lot to do with it. We grew up. We were around when computers first started being in the homes, and let's face it, we were around with dial-up. Now,
yes,
those of you of a certain age remember dial-up, right?
Yes.
And nobody had a problem with dial-up because we didn't know anything else.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But if you were to get the kids today and put them back when they had dial-up, they would lose their freaking minds. They would
they don't have the patience.
They don't have the patience, and I think that with technology, where everything has to be fast, everything has to be this, everything has to be instant. It done something to us. I mean, it done something to the way that we respond, the way that we communicate, and I think in a way that it kind of dumbed us down because we're missing out. Like I was telling you earlier today, something that I posted on my page that you written about socialism, and I'm like, man, now I don't know if anybody read it or not read it, but going by the responses, like it's like nobody, engaged the post, and not that. I said to you, I said because that we don't have the patience to really read stuff, and and it's all this, we're missing out on a lot. I think that we're missing out on a lot. I think that we're being dumbed down to the point where you got folks that are comment. How many times have we have to tell people read the article first before you comment? I mean, you put something on there and you say, well, African Americans, why aren't African Americans supporting Israel? Because Israel sucks. Well, that's not what the article says.
That's not what the article actually was not asking the actual question.
Right.
Why don't African? No, the article was explaining why. The article explained. The article, by the way, was from 2014. Was written by Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland.
Right.
The article explains why African Americans do not have the level of support of Israel that white Christians do. But because a lot of people do, is read the headlines, with the exception of a couple people, like our friend Aaron Holloway, who is in Europe right now.
Yeah, hi, Aaron.
And somebody, and another one of our friends is in Europe. So for some reason, the Baltimore Sun, where the article was published, is not available in Europe. That's a little suspicious. But so I posted the full text of the article in the comments. But before that, everybody else who's in the United States was able to click on the article and read, but they didn't. They just read the headlines and responded to that. So I mean, that kind of stuff. It just kind of gets under our skin a little bit.
Well, but it actually cheats us of having a real good dialogue about an article. Like, for example, there's things that we have posted on our page, or things I posted on the page, and you want that feedback. I mean, like, you want that conversation about this. And then when folks don't read the article, you're like, well, how can we engage in conversation? How can we talk about, this subject matter if you never even read the article? And then when you try to explain what the article is about, then, folks, well, yeah. But anyway, but that's the thing. And, and I don't care what, position that you take. I don't care what group that you're in. There's always going to be opposing views.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be opposing views. There's always going to be someone that don't see things the way that you see it. There's people that don't see things the way you and I see it. That doesn't mean that you have to be nasty. It doesn't mean that you have to be, that your responses have to be hate-filled. I mean, if you don't agree, if someone like you said something that wasn't correct about their position, then fine. Explain that to me. That don't mean you got to cuss me out. That don't mean I got to be this or I got to be that. So I just think that we really need, and social media has created a lot of bullies too.
I think so.
Yeah, a lot of online bullies because you can't go next door and punch them in the face.
Right. So, people get on their keyboards and they say all the nasty vitriolic things that they feel like they want to say, but they wouldn't dare say in person. This person was standing right there in front of them. And I think I have to add
What's that?
This. Like, we talk almost for a living. I mean, like, we're pretty close to that.
Well,
now.
You talk for a living. I still drive a truck.
Well, I still, we're getting, I mean, the thing that we have been keeping under wraps for a long time is that I'm a regular contributor now on the Real News Network. So, I mean, we have been doing other things, appearing on Sputnik, on By Any Means Necessary a lot, having regular segments on Loud and Clear. So, on the People's Republic podcast. So we talk a lot. We talk a lot. And then when we're not doing it in public forums, we actually talk to each other a lot about these issues, like a lot.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I'm just like, we both need to stop talking because there's too much. So when you talk that much about the issues, you're going to slip up and say something stupid. You are. I mean, it is unavoidable. So that's what I did in that video. And Dr. Jared Ball actually caught me and said, which is the thing that people missed, right? Because, Dr. Jared Ball said, listen, I don't want to do to the ADOS folks what has been done to us in the Pan-African, and mischaracterize their movement. And I said, you know what? That's a fair point. You're right. But people are so knee-jerk in their reactions that as soon as I said that, people were on the comment thing, oh my God, you think you're an intellectual, blah, 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 So it's like, okay, none of us are perfect. We're all flawed messengers. We certainly don't espouse that we are perfect and we know everything. We do try to get our facts straight, but every once in a while we slip up. That was my slip up, and I own up to it. Oh well, what else can you say?
Well, look, all I know is that it's a sign of maturity when you can accept someone's opposing view or someone who disagree with you, and you handle it in a civilized manner. You respond in a way that's civil.
Yeah.
So I just think that, but this has also been encouraged by our entertainment too.
Oh,
I mean, when you look at the news, the so-called news channels and stuff like that, especially when it comes to discussion. I mean, people just yell at each other. So they're I don't care if it's Fox, I don't care if it's CNN, MSNBC. You don't have that back and forth. You don't have a civilized discussion anymore. Everybody's trying to speak louder on their bullhorn, and thinking that being loud makes you right. Being loud and forceful makes you right. So I mean, I think that has crept into the way that we communicate a lot. So anyway, so we're trying not to do that. I mean, people come at us, and we have our detractors and stuff like that, but we try to respond unless you come off like an ass. But I mean, normally we kind of come at you, in a way that's civil, but it depends on where you take it.
Yeah.
So anyway, Ron asked us, he said, are we going to talk about the Mueller report? I seen Rachel Maddow's picture that people been sharing about her crying because this woman basically got a raise. She's got promotions. She done got all of this stuff off of the Mueller report.
Let me find it.
Off of this, we're going to get Trump. Oh, we're going to get him. Oh, this is it. This is impeachment time. We're going to get him. And they gave her money. I mean, they raised her profile. They got rid of some of the black people in order to free up some money to give to her. all of this stuff on the basis of thinking that they're going to get Trump and she's going to be, she's going to be the. I mean, this is her moment in history.
Yes, see, there she is, Rachel Maddow, in tears.
Never cried over any unarmed black person being killed by the police.
How about that?
Never cried over, never shed a tear over none of that other kind of stuff. Never shed a tear on anything. Never shed a tear on kids in Syria being bombed and migrants, drowning in the ocean and all of these things. No, but because Mueller said that there is no proof of collusion with Trump, oh my God. Come on. She just been exposed. Well, I always thought she was a fraud. This just proves it to me.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So for right now, that's as much, Ron, as we're going to talk about the Mueller report, because, like I think we had always said, that we didn't expect any kind of evidence to come out of this investigation that proves collusion with Russia to influence the elections.
And it's really hard. We have to understand something. It's not easy to impeach a president.
Yeah.
It's really not easy to impeach a president. And I always felt that it was really foolish on the part of a lot of progressives and liberals who was really putting all their eggs in this basket about, he's going to find something. Yeah. Oh, this is that, And, the thing of it is that it's very difficult to impeach a president. It is, because we know that that the circumstances change. We know that from during the Ford administration, that it depends on, they're the government. So, they make up what, they set the rules. So, I always felt that it was foolish for anyone to feel that, Trump was going to be impeached, behind something like that.
Yeah, I mean, behind, collusion with Russia, I think, I will say that I think from what we know, there will be no more indictments issued from this investigation, from what has been reported. So that means nobody else is going to prison outside. I mean, the from what we know from the investigation, from what they've told, even though the full report hasn't been made public yet, there are no more forthcoming indictments, which means that the president isn't getting indicted for colluding with Russia, which is, look, people can look at that however they want, but, and I'm not at all saying that Trump is innocent of anything. Like we always said, financial crimes was always the issue. His wanting to build this tower and this hotel in Russia, and his monetizing the presidency and making money off of his businesses. Yeah, that's always been an issue. But he was doing that as a private citizen.
Right. And see, that's the thing. It's a very, very legalese kind of stuff. It's not like he was president and was doing those things. I mean, a lot of times, this was done as a private citizen, as a private businessman and stuff. So it's really kind of hard to want to, connect those two like that,
Right.
So, I mean, I just feel like we wasted a lot of capital, as progressives and stuff to really, bank on this impeachment stuff. I mean, even like Rachel Maddow and MSNBC, it's like, I mean, that platform could have been used to galvanize the opposition to Trump,
right?
As opposed to this harping on hoping that this thing. So we just wasted. I just feel like MSNBC really wasted a lot of stuff on that. I think that Rachel Maddow has been exposed as the fraud that she is, and I just think that nothing is going to come out of this report. Now I know Ron said that the report hasn't been released yet, but I don't think that anything damning is going to really. Nothing's going to stick to Trump. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Nothing impeachable, and it does not matter that he commits felonies daily. If that's what Ron Williams believes, I know some people believe that. Okay, but none of those things were the focus of this investigation. Remember, this investigation was solely about proving collusion with Russia to influence the election. That's what this investigation was about. It wasn't about anything else that he did or does. It was about Russian collusion. And from what's been reported, no more indictments will be issued about anything. So, right. I mean, people can wait and see if they want to, but we got other fish to fry.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other stuff going on in the world that I just don't want to spend any more time focusing on this stuff.
Well, yeah, and I think that in the end, government is its own best protector. And I think that in the end, those of us, if anyone is really hoping to see the Trump administration fall behind this stuff, I think that you'll be disappointed. I think that we really need to galvanize our energies and focus them, like you said, on other things. I mean, presidents commit felonies every day. I mean, it's not just Trump. All presidents commit felonies every day. But it depends on who defines the felony. It depends. See, and that's the thing. It depends on who defines the felony. Who defines what is a felony? Who defines what is not a felony? So I mean, but yeah, do presidents commit immoral acts every day? Of course they do. That just goes with the nature of the job. Of course you do. So anyway, we'll, like Ron said, we'll see, and we will see. We will wait and see what will happen, and once we get more information, and once the thing is out there and it's out the frying pan onto our plate, then we'll chop it up, put some hot sauce on and chop it up, and see what it's at. So anyway, we were talking about reparations on our last show, and this whole thing about Bernie Sanders and and we're Bernie stands and all this other kind of stuff, and we really there's really a lot of heated feelings, feelings on both ends. People who love Bernie, who feel that Bernie is being unfairly targeted for the reparations thing. There's other people who feel that Bernie had enough time to really get his position straight. He was asked this in 2016. A lot of people feel like, hey, you had a couple of years to really get this together, so you shouldn't be stumbling now. And other folks think, well, you're leaving the other candidates off the hook, which we in Luqman Nation weren't. But folks have their selective biases, their selective memory. But if you remember, everybody who announced their candidacy, we gave them we took them to task. Not that we spoke to them, but we examined their position on in reparations or not. And so Bernie, he wasn't exempt. I mean, he's not going to be exempt. So again, some folks believe, and I think this is what we're going to talk about tonight, is you still have this feeling amongst a lot of Bernie supporters that black people are going to be the ones, those black people, not all black folks, but those black folks who are harping on these reparations and targeting Bernie are going to cost Bernie the election.
Yeah, which
I mean, this is the attitude out there.
And I think that is kind of the fear that is being expressed. That's like the frustration that I think some people are expressing. Like, people believe that Bernie Sanders really has a shot at the Democratic nomination this time, more of a shot than he did last time around. And they think that this conversation about reparations is a ploy to siphon votes away from Sanders. Now, I have said before on a few different platforms and on a few different places that yes, that actually is true. I think that actually is true from the DNC's perspective because of what Sanders said about reparations in 2016. So, I mean, listen, we are dealing with the Democratic Party here. We're dealing with the DNC, which we know is corrupt, and they don't want Sanders to be the nominee. So, of course, all of the other Democratic candidates are now talking about they support reparations. But when you ask them about their policies are not actually reparations. Their policies are very general economic policies that benefit and affect everyone. And they will go so far as to say, well, look, I'm not just going to sit here and say I'm going to do stuff just for black folks like Kamala Harris did. So...
and remember the story we were told yesterday about I won't mention the person's name, but they were in the meeting with Barack Obama, When all of the people, when all of when he was trying to get money from these certain people, and they were basically saying, well, they were basically pushing the black agenda, and Obama just proves what I always thought about him. Obama got up and said, I'm not going to be your nigga, and walked out and would not take their money because they were advocating policies that would help Black America.
Black people.
Now, this was something that the person who told us that was in that meeting, So, I mean, so this just proves what I always thought about Obama. I always felt that he was a fraud. I always felt that, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was crying along with everybody else to see black folks in the White House. But I knew early on that this guy was not going to be the savior of anybody, and he wasn't going to be the savior of us, So I knew that early on. It just wasn't popular amongst black folks to say that. But but then again, man, I mean, time goes by, and now we're starting to see, that we were right all the time about him.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up. That because I actually forgot that the person told us that yesterday. What was that? Yesterday. Yesterday. Yeah. Because see, here's the other kind of misconception that I think is existing in this conversation about reparations. People are also, while it's true that the other Democratic candidates are complete frauds on this issue, with the exception of maybe Warren and possibly Julian Castro, who Castro actually gave the answer that, I mean, all anybody has to do is say, you know what? I don't know what reparations look like, but we do have HR 40, and the least we can do is support that and get that passed.
But and I've been thinking about this because I remember you said this before. Why is it that Bernie, none of them want to talk about HR 40? You know why they don't want to talk about HR 40? Because that would commit them. That will commit them. So it's not that Bernie doesn't know about HR 40. Of course, he's been in Congress like forever, and HR 40 has been being introduced since 1989 or something. Surely he has some knowledge of it. Cory Booker, all of them have knowledge of it. Because now we got Sheila Jackson Lee. Now she done took the baton from Conyers now, so she's introducing it. So they all know. It's really disingenuous for them to sit up here and act like they don't know about HR 40. But they can't talk about HR 40 because then that somehow commits them to something. Because now it's going to be like, well, you mentioned HR 40 on the campaign trail.
Right.
Now you're president. What about that HR 40?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So the thing of it is, and we said this before on Luqman Nation, we have to go back to the emails that was leaked by WikiLeaks when the DNC told the candidates that Debbie
Wasserman Schultz.
No, Desi Wasserman Schultz. I had another name for it. But anyway, the email said when you're talking to Black Lives Matter. But see, let's not just stop at Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, you might as well erase that and say when you're talking to black people.
Yep.
But they put Black Lives Matter, but let's put black people, right? Don't commit to anything, right? Now, that's nothing new. They've never committed to anything for us. That's nothing new. We look at that like, oh, see, what? They never committed to anything for us. We were in Baltimore, and when y'all was doing the Real Talk though, which is a new community program that the Real News is doing, that Jacqueline was on the panel. And it was people community engagement. People were asking, but one of the things I brought up is the fact that here it is, Baltimore, or you could take Camden and all these other, and where Democrats have ruled for decades, and we've said this on the show too. How is it that you still have the amount of inequality, the amount of poverty, and all these other kind of things? When the Democrats, who's supposed to be on the side of the disenfranchised and oppressed and all this other kind of stuff, why is it that the cities they run don't reflect that? Right. So we brought that up, and so this is the thing that we were talking about when it comes to reparations. The fact that, like you said, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, even Elizabeth Warren, they're not really serious about reparations. They're saying this in a way to gain black support, and let's be honest, not all black people are for reparations,
right?
But I mean, it's really to rub Bernie's nose and stuff,
right. That's why they're doing.
That's why they're doing it.
the issue with Sanders, there are two issues, but before I get to the two issues, let me stick a pin in those two issues there, and get back to the Barack Obama story. I think the part of the frustration that I have with the way people are responding to this renewed focus on reparations is people are acting as if we are attacking Bernie because we hate him, or we're trying to make, or we're singling Bernie out, when the story that you just told, that we were just told about Obama, proves that this is an ongoing issue that Black people have had with politicians in regard to this reparations issue. And it wasn't just with Obama, it was with Bush. I'm going to give you a link where I'm not going to highlight the story, but I have all of these links to all of these articles on all of the reparations issues. In 2001, there was a United Nations International Conference on world racism or something like that.
Yeah, that was the conference that the United States boycotted because Israel was being accused of being an apartheid state,
right? And
they didn't want to participate in
right
that.
Because there were specific African nations specifically called out Zionism,
right?
And Zionism as being racist, another form of racism, and like you said, accused Israel of being an apartheid state. So the United States got mad at that, walked out. But before they walked out, like 2 weeks before they walked out, there was this big discussion about reparations. And there were some African countries, the leaders of African countries, who didn't want to talk about compensation for colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade, but there were other nations that did. So there was this big discussion, international discussion, about reparations for African people as a result of colonization and enslavement around the world. And there was a resolution that came out of that conference. But the United States does not recognize that resolution or the resulting conference on NGOs, which even had more pointed language about what the United States has to do to address racial discrimination. The United States doesn't recognize those documents because it walked out of the conference and didn't sign on to any of the resolutions because of the issue of Zionism. This was in 2001. Before the United States walked out, George Bush Jr.
Right.
was speaking to the media about the conference, and he said, from what I see, it seems like the question of reparations, from what I see so far, is solved. That's now, we don't really know what that means because 9/11 happened. Immediately after he made that, I think he made that
now,
statement.
we're not saying that 9/11 happened because they didn't want to get
we're just
not saying that.
We're saying
it just the event happened,
This is just the way events happened in the world. So something that was extremely important to the struggle of oppressed Black people around the world was overshadowed by the world focusing on this other. Was overshadowed by the United States acting like a petulant little bitch over the issue of Zionism and Israel's apartheid state against Palestine, and also world events. So this was in 2001. And this issue has so I say that to say that for Black people, not just in this country but around the world, the issue of reparations for not just slavery but everything we have suffered as a result of slavery has been going on for a long time. So no, nobody is singling Bernie out because he's Bernie and because we don't want him to win and because, we don't want the other policies that Bernie is advocating to happen. We actually do. We always have. The thing is, Black people have always said, look, general policies are great. Nobody should be poor in this country. This government owes people basic human rights and the right to it and the right to a job,
Well,
health care, housing.
the thing of it is that I mean, this is what they espouse.
Right.
So I mean, you can't blame people if you say that this is what we're about, wanting you to live up to that.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not like, you know, the founding fathers said, you know, well, you know, look, I mean, if they really put what they meant was, we believe that all rich white men are created equal,
right,
and everybody else be damned. And,
right.
You know, so I mean, but the country basically espouses that it has certain values, or it claims to have certain values, and it claims to you know, to be the, you know, like on the Statue of Liberty, give us your tire, your port, and all that stuff. So that, you know, the country, you know, pretends to be that beacon of hope and all this stuff. So you can't blame people if they want you to live up to that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or live up to those ideas and those value systems, you know? So when people say, well, you know, this government don't owe you anything, well, they never should have said it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They never should have said it. You know what I mean? You know, yeah, well, they owe us a lot.
You can't take it back.
And they owe us a lot. So when they say, oh, well, the United States don't know, well, they owe us a lot. You know, you might not want it, but, you know, they might not owe you, but they owe us a lot, and this is why, you know, why we're bringing this stuff up. But go ahead. What you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, so like Black people have historically, generally, always supported, you know, general policies that would alleviate everyone's inequality issues. Black people have just said we have a particular claim for justice that is in addition to those general policies. So when Sanders says things like nobody's defined racism, and those of us who are Pan-Africanists know about the International World Conference on Racism, when we know about organizations like NCOBRA, when we know about legislation like H.R. 40, and Sanders can't seem to bring himself to even mention the title of the legislation, he can call out the 10-20-30 program. He can mention that, which is not focused on alleviating racial inequality, but rural inequality in communities that have been distressed and poor for more than 30 years. But you don't know about H.R. 40?
Well, but we already know he knows about it.
Right.
We're saying that they don't want to commit themselves to anything that is attached to reparations. So they pretend it doesn't exist.
Right.
This is what they do. They pretend it doesn't exist. Like the government pretends we don't exist. Like, you know, like white supremacy pretends that we've never suffered anything.
Right.
You know, that we all started off at the same starting block. What's wrong with you Black people? Well, you know, just to quote, what's that pastor, Frederick, from out California.
Price?
Price, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I saw an old video of Price, and I mean, basically, that's true. I mean, we were released, our ancestors were released from enslavement, and wasn't given anything. And I love the analogy that he gave about the Monopoly game. Mm-hmm. When you play Monopoly, or those of us who play Monopoly, and I love this example he gave, is that everyone starts off with $1,500.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Now follow me here. Everyone starts off with $1,500. Now, Price said that he wanted to prove how African Americans were affected by not getting anything from their ordeal. So he said he joined the game and told them he didn't want no money. Everybody else got $1,500, but he said he didn't want no money. He said he lasted maybe 2 times around the board. He was immediately out the game.
Right.
Now think about that. Think about that. Everybody else got $1,500. Now, what you do with your $1,500 is on you. But he was at the game with nothing, and he was immediately out of the game. Mm-hmm. So you know, I thought that was a good example, because I'm saying, like, this is what happened to our people.
Right.
You know, you cannot be released in a capitalist society without capital.
Exactly. You don't survive, and you can't participate.
Right.
You don't survive, which is the whole point of reparations. It's addressing the injustice of having us, of bringing us to this capitalist society against our will, actually having our ancestors build this capitalist society, and then denying us participation.
Right, and not just build it, We're watching a documentary on the Vietnam War right now, which I really, if you love documentaries, man, I mean, really check this out on Netflix. It's about the Vietnam War, Ken Burns. And one of the things that they highlighted in the documentary was the amount that was the participation of African Americans in the Vietnam War as soldiers, much higher than the percentage of our population here. Much higher than the percentage of our population here. So it wasn't the fact that we built the country. The fact that we that we defended it, we spilled blood for it, we did all of these other things, and it used to really hurt me when I used to hear some of the Black World War II veterans who used to say how hurt they were when they would come stateside, and a lot of the German prisoners, officers and stuff, were allowed to eat in the white officer hall, German officers now, and how German prisoners of war would sit in front of Black GIs.
Right.
In fact, Lena Horne wouldn't perform because she saw that.
We got to find that article. We got to find that. Find some links to those articles to give to our folks, because that's important. To know.
Yeah. So it's not just that they built the country, or our ancestors built the country. The fact that it wasn't just labor; it was also intellectual contributions.
Right.
The fact of Black. Look. When you have a class of people who were the most skilled people in the country, because they were slaves. They built everything.
Right.
So you're not talking about people who weren't skilled. And if you're forced to work, the first thing that human beings do is find an easier way to do the work. So this is where a lot of inventions came from.
That's right.
So a lot of Black people invented stuff that contributed to the technology of this of the society. That contributed a lot to this. So it was intellectual contributions. It was cultural contributions. So you can't. And the reason why, and there's really no dollar amount. And the reason why so many folks, and I don't know about the Black people, because it really confuses me why Black people would be against this, but I think that the reason why a lot of white people and others are against it, I think because, and we spoke about this, I think that a lot of white people, and they might not realize it, but if you were to give reparations to African Americans, whether it's a check, whatever, but to basically try to alleviate or close some of the gap, you'll never catch up with white people. And Black people, stop talking about this catching up stuff.
Yeah.
All of you Black capitalists out there that got all of these plans about how to catch up with white people, you won't catch up with white people. They have a 240-year head start.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
We
can close the gap. We can probably close the gap, but you'll never catch up. If we're both in a race and you have a 240-year head start, I don't care how fast I run, I'm not catching you.
Right.
So, so we need to get out of that fantasy.
Yeah.
But another thing is that I think a lot of people, and I think a lot of white people are opposed to reparations. I think, and maybe subconsciously they don't think about it, but it would give Black people, if Black people were to finally get an injection of economic stimulus from reparations, that would upset the balance of power.
Yeah.
Because if Black people had a lot more money, if Black people had a lot more assets, a lot more property, and all of these things that would come with reparations, then guess what? It'd be harder for politicians to ignore us. Right. It'd be harder for people like Obama to say, "I'm not going to be your nigga." It'd be hard
to us.
Right. It'd be harder for politicians to basically just write us off. It'd be harder. It would be a lot harder for law enforcement to do what they do with it, because money means power, and power means political clout. You could do a lot. All crime syndicate members want to go legit because they understood that.
How about that?
They understood that.
And the point you brought up about power, about upsetting the balance of power. See, when the non-compensatory, the non-monetary or non-asset possibilities of reparations are also considered, like a complete overhaul in all of the educational curriculums, where it concerns, like if instead of American history as it's currently framed in all of our schools, Howard Zinn's a people's history of the United States is taught, then that changes the narrative of this country, and that upsets the intellectual balance of power. that a lot of white people think they
True,
have.
yeah.
If you're talking about, like was talking to somebody else earlier about something that I think would be good, that I think is based on like the CARICOM model for reparations, which is the Caribbean Commission on Reparations. They talk about repatriation from an international perspective, but what about granting us dual citizenship in any African country that is offering it? I mean, that changes our perspective, and it provides, and it no longer makes us captive to this country.
You're not a Negro anymore. See, and see, and that's people always say, when you were talking about finding out where some of your ancestors came from, and I said to you, when you looked at the map in Africa and found out the region that some of your ancestors came from, and I said, now that you know what region and that you can connect it to a landmass, you are no longer a Negro. See, white folks understood what they were doing. I mean, those white folks understood what they were doing. And see, the term Negro, they said, oh, well, it just was Spanish for black. No, it was to deny you access to history, to your culture, to your land, to your language. That's why the Africans, and Malcolm, when he went to speak to African students in Ghana, he used the word Negro, and they corrected him. They said, we don't use that word here. We don't like that word. Because as Africans, they know who they are. They know where they are. Right. Negro means nothing. There is no Negro land. There is no Negro continent. There is no nothing. So the term Negro was a racist term that black people at that time accepted for themselves, but it didn't identify you as nothing. And that's what it was. What is a Negro? A Negro is an American-made product. That's what the black man and woman was in this country. American-made. So they gave you the stamp. White supremacy said, oh, this is our Negro. Boom. Just like that. And that's what it was. Negro is a frame of thinking. Negro is a way of being. Negro is a way of acting, and all this other kind of stuff. It's not until we free ourselves from those things, and part of that is like you did, is to reconnect yourself to your landmass and this and that and the other. Then you're no longer a Negro, and that's the thing. So so a lot of that that has a lot to do with the way that black people in this country has been operating, so once we get out of that, and that's the thing, reparations would also mean identity, feeling a sense of self. You could do more. You don't have to depend on all this. And so what happens is that becomes a threat. Right. Capitalism has to have people to exploit. There has to be somebody at the bottom for capitalism to work. So we have always been deemed it. So we can't give you reparations because then who are we going to exploit?
Yeah, exactly. We come on now. We can't really exploit the immigrants as much because they have a country that can back them if we do. I mean, even though the leader that's a whole nother show. But anyway, all right. Look, let's talk about HR 40 real quick. Yeah, let's talk about HR 40 because I did say I was going to make sure we get into some of this. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Because I want to be, like we said, look, people will disagree with your position. And we don't want to be disrespectful to people, but we are passionate about this, just like people are passionate about their positions. And we can disagree with civility. I just like to point out the facts that are there because sometimes I don't explain things that clearly. So people have said, look, what do reparations mean? HR 40 exists to define what reparations could mean in a legislative sense. HR 40 exists to do the work to define why we need reparations and what they would look like. Here's the purpose of HR 40. To establish a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans as a result of, and it doesn't just cover slavery, it starts with the institution of slavery, but it includes the transatlantic and the domestic trade. It also includes the de jure and de facto discrimination against, I don't care, Amazon, against freed slaves and their descendants. So it's not just slavery. It's not just reparations for slavery. It also talks about the negative effects of studying the negative effects of the institution of slavery and the discrimination described in the first two paragraphs in American society, and what we talked about, how digital resources, basically, how the system uses education to spread misinformation about our enslavement in this country, the transatlantic slave trade, and our ongoing discrimination in this society. So that all that's here in these 5 through 7. It deals with how to educate the American public on the findings. It deals with the direct benefits to societal institutions, public and private, including higher education. And if some of this looks familiar, it should, because if H.R. 40 is passed, most of this work has actually already been done. So there isn't like a whole lot of work this commission actually has to do, because organizations like NCOBRA, NAARC, people like Dr. Charles Ogletree and the attorneys who adjudicated the reparations for Japanese internment victims, and the attorneys who adjudicated reparations for Jewish Holocaust survivors who worked with Dr. Charles Ogletree. They've worked on a lot of this. We've seen a lot of this being published in articles, how colleges, universities, Georgetown, Harvard, Yale, were built off of the sale of enslaved people, the money from the... So we have this information. So, and this is what we talked about the other day on another panel. It is conceivable that if H.R. 40 is passed, the commission would be convened. And the very first thing that this commission would do is gather all of this information that already exists. They don't actually have to study much of anything because the study's already been done.
Right.
They just have to compile all this stuff in a lexicon. Y'all get what I'm saying. So here's the other good part, the other section 3, which is the establishment and the duties of the commission, which is to study and develop reparation proposals. And they'll perform the following duties: identify, compile, and synthesize the relevant corpus of evidentiary documentation of the institution of slavery. Look, what we just said, it exists. And this includes all of this, which pertains to the specific period of enslavement. But it also includes the role in which the federal and state government supported the institutions of slavery. Then it includes the discriminatory laws that were passed against formerly enslaved Africans and their descendants who were deemed United States citizens from 1868 to the present. So for people who are saying that reparations only covers the period of enslavement, that's H.R. 40 makes it clear that that's not true. They also talk about not just enslavement, but other forms of discrimination in public and private sectors.
Well, again, I mean, if you're going to talk about reparations, you have to talk about government policies that disenfranchised us, leaving us out of the New Deal, leaving us out of, so all of those things count because they all impacted us negatively, financially and socially. It limited our social mobility.
Exactly. So here's the meat of this, and we're going to get off this. Recommend appropriate remedies. This is a response to people who are asking, what would reparations look like? H.R. 40 answers the question. The commission to study and make recommendations for reparations it seeks to answer the question. Recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the commission's remedies. And then, it's like we can never answer this question enough for people who just won't support H.R. 40 so that their question can be answered. And it's kind of frustrating, but okay. So the commission shall address, among other issues, the following questions: how such recommendations comport with international standards of remedy for wrongs and injuries caused by the state, that include full reparations and special measures as understood by various relevant international protocols and findings. Now, I got to stop right there because that one clause is very important because people don't realize that there are international findings and standards for reparations for people who are victims of human rights abuses.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it real quick on my Google Docs.
All right, we only got 5 minutes.
I know. Here it is. I think this is it. Yep. I didn't want to have all of these open at the same time because it would have ate up some bandwidth. So this is from the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the organization that came out with the report a couple years ago, or was it last year, that said the United States owes African Americans reparations for enslavement and racial discrimination. These are basic principles and guidelines on the right to a remedy and reparation for victims of gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law. This has existed since December 2015. Gonna go down here. Reparation for harm suffered. Not gonna read these. I just want people to see that this exists. Mm-hmm. That there is a written standard, an internationally recognized standard for what reparations could look like in general in regard to international violation or violations of international human law and violations of international humanitarian law. So that when you go back over here, look, it's restitution and compensation does not just include money, but it might.
Yeah, I mean, but it might.
But it might. So it includes some other stuff.
Right.
But it might.
But again, I told you when we spoke about this yesterday. The problem of it is giving Black folks money.
Yep. So let's go back over to HR 40 and wrap this up. HR 40 addresses, among other issues, how the government shall offer a formal apology. They did that. That formal apology is a piece of garbage.
But you can't use it to sue.
Because that's what they said in the actual formal apology for slavery. Yes, we enslaved you and that was terrible and we're sorry. We apologize, but you can't use this as a legal basis for reparations. So that apology, stop asking for that. Because that's crap. They talk about how federal laws and policies, how the commission will address how federal laws and policies continue to negatively affect African Americans as a group, how injuries resulting from those previous matters described can be reversed, and provide appropriate policies, programs, projects, and recommendations for the purpose of reversing the injuries, and how the findings, any form of compensation is calculated, what form of compensation should be awarded, how, all that kind of stuff. So people who are asking, what do reparations look like? I understand that HR 40 is imperfect in people's view. Okay, I agree. It probably is imperfect. It probably is incomplete.
All right, but the people that's talking about it's imperfect, what do they got?
And that's kind of my question. It's like people, people say, like, one of the arguments is, aren't the
man
snack time?
Sorry, y'all. That was a really good.
I didn't know I was gonna go back that. I didn't know, but we have pizza from Uno's, so look.
Yeah, I look like a damn camel.
You do not look like a camel. You look like a man enjoying some Uno's pizza.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to switch that.
I didn't think it was going to switch back that far either, but that's okay. We're human. We have snacks. So like one of the criticisms that I hear, now I want some more pizza and I forgot what I was going to say.
I just knew I was going to get away with eating that pizza.
So one of the criticisms that I hear from several people, I don't want to take anybody to take this personally, is that, you know, some of these programs to address specific racial disparities, aren't they something that the government should already be doing? Well, of course they're things that the government should already be doing, but it's not. The government isn't doing these things. The government hasn't been honest about the damage that slavery did. The government hasn't been honest about the lingering legacy of slavery. Hasn't been honest about the discrimination that it committed against African people and African descended people in this country. It hasn't been honest about any of this stuff. So the government actually hasn't done what the government should do. So for me, that's like, why are we asking that question when the evidence that the government hasn't done anything is obvious in all the studies we keep citing to explain why we need Bernie Sanders policies? But then when we point out, like Derek Hamilton did at Bernie Sanders' Inequality Town Hall last year, that everybody loved when he said it, but all of a sudden it's the most ridiculous statement in the world. Hamilton pointed out that these general policies that Sanders have that would address inequality for all people are great, and we need them. But racial discrimination exacerbates the problems for Black people to the point where, okay, free college tuition is absolutely necessary and we should have it. But your average American household headed by a Black college graduate has less wealth than your average American household headed by a white high school dropout. So making college free is not going to address that. It's a good thing for all people, but it's not going to address that particular racial disparity. So Derek Hamilton said in front of a place packed full of Bernie supporters that at some point, you know, we can enact these general policies, and we should, but at some point we have to deal with reparations. Oh, everybody cheered. Everybody cheered and thought it was wonderful and loved the idea. But now here we are asking Bernie about why he suddenly is asking, what do reparations look like? And nobody's defined it. And asking him, why can't you just support HR 40 so we can get there? And people are acting like we're trying to take Bernie down. And to me, that's disingenuous, and it's dishonest, and it is another dismissal of this issue that we keep pushing while we're once again being told, look, just support the person who can get the most for everybody, and then we'll deal with your issues. Mm-hmm. We were told that under Obama twice. We were told that under Bush. We were told that under everybody else. And I think at this point, a lot of us are like, no, if this guy is our best chance to get anything good, then why can't we make sure he gets this right?
We're out of time. So I ain't nothing else to say. So, I mean, but no, the point is taken. I mean, there's nothing to add to it, really. I agree.
So we have lots and lots of links, as always. We always have lots of links for y'all to click on, to read, to get the information, to do your homework.
But especially, I mean, and I know it's a lot in there, but please, if you have the time, click on HR 40 and just familiarize yourself with it and see that, there's been a lot of thought put into this thing.
A lot. I mean, so we really needed to do this follow-up show on our last reparations show. And this is a conversation we're going to continue to have. It's
been 400 years in the making. I mean, my God. Yeah. I mean, but if you can't stand a couple of weeks of talking about, but this been 400 years in the making. 500 years actually. Yeah. I'm sure you can indulge us to talk about it for a few weeks.
Yeah, nobody's trying to scuttle Sanders' campaign. We really are trying to get to an honest discussion about this issue with the person who has the bully pulpit to really shape discourse and how progressives, at least people who call themselves progressives, think about these issues. So, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate all of your support for us in Luqman Nation. We appreciate how you've supported us throughout this time. Look, check us out. Friday, Saturday, we try to get it in. Well, we try to get a show in between all this other stuff. Share this video if you like what you see on Luqman Nation. Consider supporting us through Patreon, monthly or one-time support through PayPal or GoFundMe. You can find us on all of those platforms under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation. When's your next Pitbull in politics, sir?
I might move it to Sundays because Saturdays is kind of filled up.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we might have one tomorrow. We'll keep it posted.
Cool. That will be the next Pitbull and politics. Stay tuned for the announcement for that. Check us out on, I'm still so tickled by this, the Real News Network. And I know he wants to go because we're tired. We've had.
I'm like, is there anything else we got to talk about?
Yeah, but I gotta say this on camera. I have to say this on camera. You all see me on camera a lot on other platforms like the Real News Network. And people often think that, when they think of Luqman Nation, they think of me, of Jackie Luqman. I need people to understand that I wouldn't be doing this were it not for him. I can't prepare for interviews. I don't have the historical connection with a lot of the world events unless I get it from him. He helps me with that. He is he's not just my husband, he's not just my friend, he's the producer of this damn thing. He's actually the creator of this thing. So when you see me on the Real News Network, either talking to somebody or interviewing somebody else, please understand that it's not just me. It's both of us, and a lot more of it than you realize is him.
Well, it's funny, and thank you for that. It's funny because, I'm not comfortable even, and this, I'm not comfortable really being on screen or nothing like that. That's why I love Pitbulls and politics, because you don't have to see me. I could just, But anyway, but one of the things that used to really bug me is I used to put stuff on our page, or every now and then I put stuff on the page, and I come up with a brilliant, I feel like it's a brilliant response to something. And somebody say, "Oh, Jackie, you're right about what you said. Jackie didn't say that.
Jackie didn't say that.
I said it. Jackie didn't say, oh, Jackie, what you say? Oh, I agree with you. Jackie didn't say it. But anyway, but we are a team, and I'm very proud of the opportunities that Jackie's has been given. And hey, look, man. Whatever good happens for her happens for me, happens for us. So. That's the way we look at it, you know what I mean? And this ain't no Ike and Tina here. You know what I mean? This ain't no Ike and Tina here.
Because I fights back.
You know what I mean? So, we're in it together. So, and we couldn't do this without you guys. If you guys didn't, take time out of your day to come tune in to us, to listen to what we have to say, then we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be where we are right now. And whatever is in store for us for the future, you guys are the catalyst for that too. So we thank you and we appreciate you all.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And as always, be really good to each other, y'all. Peace.